but we'll get into it now. So I'm going to do one last test because some things seem to change. You want to give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so all I was doing is reading the first paragraph there, but what I'm saying is this lab is substituting images of food for graphic images. Okay, so whatever those might be, some kind of illegal graphic image. And these are just some alarming statistics, which are completely made up. Right? So the idea here is we've got some bad juju, we've got some bad stuff that we have to try and stop. We want to catch the guy who is suspected of downloading this stuff, but we also want to catch the person who's distributing it. So there's two people potentially involved here. Okay. So you've been assigned to the case to investigate a young man who was caught violating the computer use policy of his university. His name is Hunter Ackerman. So, which, Hackerman. He booted off of a USB stick in one of the labs in the middle of the night at the university and proceeded to connect to the internet. So he was booting off alternate media, but using their device, right? Network security detected encrypted traffic to a suspected food porn site. So they didn't know what the content was, but they knew that the site was not a great site to go to. Campus security were called in, and they kind of caught him in the process of using the system, but he tried to do some cleanup so that they wouldn't be able to tell what he'd been doing. Okay, so one security guard clearly saw Hunter delete a Gmail draft, although he didn't see the content of it. So something that he was in the process of composing, they weren't able to stop him. Okay. The police were quickly brought in, but a live response investigation failed to turn up any useful information. And so they took an image of the RAM and an image of, well, the USB stick, essentially. So they made a digital copy of it. He seemed to have been using a modified Windows PE that gave it a whole bunch of functionality. So a whole bunch of applications were installed on it. Nothing incriminating was found, but the police suspect that he's using steganography to conceal his crimes. Okay, so your job is to analyze both of the binary images and figure out if he was indeed downloading food porn. So the police are hoping that this incident can crack open a food porn distribution ring operated by the second man, who goes by the name of Charlie's Angel. Okay, so if you can establish that, there was a connection between Charlie and Hunter, and you can actually establish that Hunter downloaded food porn, then we might be able to catch both of them. Okay, so Hunter is kind of the small fish; he's a small fry, and Charlie's Angel is the big fry. Okay, his real name isn't known, but police do have a picture here. Clearly a rough character. So what we want is to yeah, see, I copyright, I can use my own photos. We need hard evidence linking him to food porn, and then we can bring down his entire ring, right? So Hunter may be kind of the wedge that gets us in to break open this food porn distribution ring. So despite the fact that this picture has been widely distributed, law enforcement hasn't been able to locate him. So any kind of clues to where he is would also be useful. Okay, they suggest that he resides in a remote location where he indulges his gluttonous habit with impunity. If any clue can be found his whereabouts, that will be extremely helpful to the wider investigation. If you succeed, 2 cases may be solved and in one. Okay. Now, there's multiple stages to this case, but I want to emphasize that I am not presenting, when I ask for the report, I'm not asking for it in chronological order. You're going to be jumping around from piece of information to piece of information until you get enough to put it all together, you know? So what you really need to do is gather all the data and then kind of immerse yourself in it and analyze it. This is not like step 1, do this, step 2, do this, okay? Just so you know. So when I actually give you, part one introduction, that's the nature of the report. It's not necessarily the nature of how you're going to discover the information. Okay. So in the end, you have to put all the information together and create a report outlining your findings. Work in groups of up to 4, and I'm expecting that you will work with volatility and autopsy, but you can bring other tools to the table if you want to. Okay. Your summative report is group-based, so you all submit one summative report which has all the interpretation that a lay reader would be more interested in. Okay. But you should also include a autopsy report, which is just printed at the end of a case. And that's a bit more like a data dump, okay? So each user, each member of your group is going to produce an autopsy report. That just shows that you participated in the group activity, okay? And then the summative report is pulling all the pieces together and making them understandable to somebody, some lay reader like a lawyer. So there is a separate submission in the sense that you're all going to produce this autopsy report, but I only need one submission when it comes to the summative report. Okay, screenshots are okay in this report, but they do require explanatory text. I shouldn't have to look at the picture or the image to understand what you're talking about. The image should help me understand, but it shouldn't be the main thing. Okay. Okay, so introduction, you just identify who you are, what tools you're using, the nature of the case, um, and how you divvied up the work if you divvied it up. So I would recommend that everybody just kind of work together and, throw out ideas because I find that's more useful. But it's really your call how you want to do this. If you want to, the problem is when you go to do the quiz or anything like that, if you haven't worked on a certain section of it, you're less prepared, right? Okay, part 2, disk image processing. So this is where you're taking the USB stick or the image that I give you, and you're just going to run through and you're going to categorically identify different types of hiding that's going on here. Okay, so there's actually more to it than that, but you want to create a new case, set it to your student number, and that's going to be the thing that you submit in the end is a printout of this, right? Fill out your name and email address. You don't need to provide a phone number. The email address, I mean, that could just be your student mail. I really don't care. Load the disk image into autopsy and let it do its thing. And then what I want you to do is add in, if you go over to our offline analysis section in Brightspace here, there's this HBCDPE, and you've got suspect files. These are 2 text files which have hashes of known good files and known bad files. Okay. So what I want you to do is to feed those into autopsy uh, so that autopsy can identify the ones that are really no big deal, and then the ones that are notable. And I want you to go and tag them. Okay, so the ones that are notable, that is to say. So most of the files you're not going to have to actually tag. That's the purpose of the HBCDPE. It just basically says this is a known file, and you could just be like, okay, so we know that this is not a bad thing. And what that means is that this is Hiren's boot CD PE image. This is a hash of the original Hiren's boot CD. Okay, it's a hash of all of those files, and so those came with the distribution. Therefore, we know that they're okay. All right, so you just have to cross-reference, and that'll take a lot of the hay out of your haystack. You know what I mean? So use HBCDPE hash list to identify the files in the system that are unknown. So that is to say the ones that aren't recognized. And those we can call possible steganography. That doesn't mean that we found anything. It just means these are the ones that are actually, they don't really fit in somehow, right? So they still warrant investigation. So tag them as cat0 uncategorized. You may not be able to put a colon. I don't really care. So long, just put uncategorized. So long as I can understand what it is. It may not allow certain characters. Use the suspect files hash list to identify any files of concern. Provide that list with the full path of the files under the heading Steg Tools. Okay. With a description of what function each tool serves, tag these items as notable, right? Provide a list with MD5 hashes of deleted files. So notice we're using MD5, that's what Autopsy likes, of deleted files under the heading recovered files. Okay, that's something that Autopsy should do for you. The reason I'm asking for this though is because I'm kind of highlighting items that I want you to focus your attention on, right? You can exclude any of the MFT files for the purposes of, not taking too long yourself, not killing yourself with too much, too much data dumping. So tag these items as notable under Autopsy, okay, except for the MFTs. Those can be ignored. Identify all file systems. So there's more than one file system on this USB disk. That being said, it's not going to be as easy to identify the other ones, okay? You're going to find the first one's going to be pretty obvious. When I say identify the file systems, I mean tell me what kind of file system it is, right? Tell me how large it is. Tell me what media it's on, okay? Which that might sound like a weird thing, but I want you to think about that a little bit. Include the information in a table under the heading file systems. So again, I'm asking you to categorize and identify different aspects of your findings, okay? Now, a heads up, you're going to go and you're going to view things and you'll have a bit of information. You'll maybe start building a table, and then you're going to come back and you're going to find something later. That's going to happen, okay? So you're going to have to adjust your data as you go. Like when it comes to file systems, you won't find all of them right away. And you might find one later, and then you might find that there's more for you to identify after that. It really depends on what you're examining, but be prepared to adjust your findings as you go. Identify any interesting or useful email addresses and how they relate to the investigation. That's also a hint, okay? And include an explanation of the ones that were useful. So how were they useful, okay? In terms of hiding techniques, this is also categorization. So I want you to identify simple hiding versus steganography versus AD streams. Okay, you want to be able to say, I know that this is this type. Okay. So in this section, you should identify any signs of deliberate concealment. So just because something's a little obscure doesn't mean that that's obvious that they were trying to hide something. Okay, you want to be a little doubtful of your own suspiciousness, and just kind of, or suspicion, and just kind of say, okay, how likely is it that this is actively being hidden versus just being something that's a little weird? So the different categories of hiding. Any instances of simple hiding, so misleading file names, the use of attributes like hidden or system so that things aren't visible, placing it in an obscure location, so burying it somewhere even though it's useful information, or using a misleading path or file name. So steganography and AD streams don't count they don't count as this type of simple basic hiding. Okay, this is something that your grandma could do, really. Like name a file something different. I don't know about your grandma, but you get my idea. This is not too complicated. List and explain these instances under the table of simple hiding. Then we want any AD streams on the system and where you found them. I'll give you a hint. There's only one stream. Okay, so when you find it, your search for streams is done. But it's also the big find. Like that's actually rather hard to do. So place these under the heading of hidden streams. Do not include hidden streams that are a normal part of OS function. So either icons, which can use hidden streams, or internet zone files. Those don't really count because they're conventional files unless they have something unusual in them. Right? Include their MD5 hashes, and identify any confirmed carriers or payloads of steganography under the heading confirmed steg files. If it's confirmed, that means that you've opened it up and you've accessed it. Okay. If it's otherwise, it's just possible steganography. That means that you haven't really succeeded in doing that, but you think maybe there's something in there. So this section is just for the stuff that you actually discover. Include the type of steganography employed, where the files were located, full path, and whether they were a carrier or a payload. So you want to indicate both files, what's in there and also what the container is. Make sure these items are tagged as notable in autopsy and include their MD5 hashes in a table. Identify any innocuous files that seem to have been deliberately made to look suspicious, but are actually completely useless. And list those under the heading red herrings, okay? So if I'm throwing you off the trail and I'm giving you something that is kind of occupying your time, but it's not actually, there's nothing in there that's of any use, that's a red herring, okay? You want to tag those as non-pertinent under autopsy. RAM analysis, I've already done a capture of the RAM. That's available to you up on SharePoint. Hunter was caught while composing that email draft, and then he deleted it, okay? So our hope is that even though he deleted it, it's still up there in RAM somewhere in the process, okay? So what we're interested in, he was running Chrome. We want to look at his Chrome processes and try and recover that draft that he was working on, okay? So he never had a chance to get his message out, but he was careful to delete any past communications. In this part, we want to perform an analysis on the RAM to try and prove the connection between Hunter and Charlie. Identify the browser processes. So I want process IDs that were active at the time. Dump those processes and take an MD5 hash of them. So once you've got the actual processes on your file system, then take an MD5 hash. Include the hashes in the report. Review the dumps for any email messages that might be present that could prove the connection between Hunter and Charlie, and provide details of how you did that. So I'm leaving that up to you, how you want to analyze the dumps that you grabbed from RAM, okay? Include the text of any recovered email messages in the report. And then in the conclusion, I just want a higher level summary, what you managed to do, how effective it is improving the case. Were you able to locate or make a link between Hunter and Charlie? Okay, so a high-level overview of the findings, a good time to introduce or briefly revisit any of the steganographic payloads, because those are really the big thing, right? If he's hiding food porn, it's going to be in steganography probably. Add any other details that you feel need to be mentioned. So anything that's not covered in the previous sections, if you feel it's worth it, mention it here. Provide details about the pros and the cons of working on this case. So that's just feedback, right? And any recommendations for the future lab discussion. Provide your individual autopsy report. Sorry, this should not be HTML. This should be PDF. It does generate HTML reports. I'll edit that and fix it. I'll put that right now, though. Oops. What I want you to do is print to PDF, okay? The reason is when you produce an HTML report and you submit that to me, it's not going to submit all the images and all that kind of stuff. And so I just get the skeleton, which isn't really readable. So I really need it to be turned into a PDF. So this part of the deliverable should be unique to each person. And if you didn't do this, you don't get points for the other stuff that you've submitted as a group, because this basically shows that you participated. Okay. This is just how it's broken down. This just shows you what they found at the crime scene. So he's got a very clean Gmail box. And this is what the operating system looked like when they took the image. Okay. This is a sample report, what you can expect it would look like. So you can see that my name is in there, the case number, I put my student number, right? And then there's links below if you're interested in any kind of hints, okay? So I won't really go into those because some of you like hints and some of you don't, but that can give you some clues as to what's going on here. Okay. When you get to the end of it, there should be quite a few food porn images, and there should be 180 stream. If you've got all of that, you're pretty much done. Okay, and if you got all the email and all that kind of stuff, and you put it all together, then there's not much more for you to do. Okay, so I know you can have that feeling like, oh, maybe there's more I can find. But if you get that far, that you've got the food porn, you've got that AD stream, and you've got the email, then you're able to establish connections between Hunter and Charlie. You can stop at that point. Okay. Any questions? For taking MD5, we just do this, right? So util hash that you can do that, yeah. You can also do get file hash. Either of those will work. Yeah, they should produce the same output. The other thing is, though, Autopsy uses MD5 a lot of the time, so most of the time you're just grabbing what Autopsy produces, but there are some times when you'll have to do it yourself. Yeah, and that should work. Yeah. Get file hash, you just do dash algorithm, I think, and then provide MD5 as the algorithm, which will do the same thing. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Have fun. Maybe let me know who your groups are ahead of time. Just like send me a message or something like that once you've sorted it all out. I found that in the last lab, people did, the groups are pretty good, I found. I don't know what your experience was, but if you got a good mark and you're happy with it, maybe stick with the groups you have. I won't, I'm not going to force that on people, but worked out okay last time. Okay. All right. Daddy's going to get a drink.